Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. So today we will be discussing 3 questions on these 2 topics from GS3, that is economy part. So the first topic would be Indian economy and the issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. The second topic would be effects of liberalization on the economy, changes in the industrial policy and their effects on the industrial growth. So let's take an overview of all the 3 questions. So the first question is related to the private sector participation in the space domain, in the space economy. Second question is related to gig economy. The third question is related to India's development with respect to export-led development and growth. So let's start with the first question. First question says that the Indian Space Policy 2023, it facilitates greater private sector participation in the activities that have usually been the traditional domain of ISRO. So in this context, we need to discuss the significance of opening the space sector for the greater private sector participation. So what it is saying, that we have come up with the Indian Space Policy 2023 and it is boosting the private sector and it is encouraging the private sector to take part in Indian space domain or the sector or economy. So we need to write down the significance. This is the major demand, that we need to write down the significance or the importance of increasing private sector participation in space economy. Now the Indian Space Policy 2023 has come up and it is boosting or encouraging the private sector to participate in the Indian space economy, so that we can exploit this sector as well, so as to make it commercial, so as to take the more and more advantages of out of it and to increase the economic growth of India. So there are some challenges. Like the current situation is that there is not much private sector participation. Private sector is limited to just being a vendor or the supplier to the government space program. But as we can see at the counterparts, like the private partners at the global scale, if we can see about the SpaceX, Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, so they have revolutionized the space sector. They have exploited it like to increase their commercialization prospects and to increase the economies of their country. They have increased the space tourism as well, space diplomacy as well. So India via this policy can also boost the private sector participation so as to stand at par with these global partners or the global counterparts. First thing is this, you can write about some global best practices like these things. Also you can write about that globally space economy value is approximately $360 billion. And India, despite being one of the very few nations that have the footprints in the space or the spacefaring nation, spacefaring is who have traveled through the space. So despite being one amongst the few spacefaring nation and despite being ISRO, the 6th largest space agency, the India's percentage in this global space economy is approximately 2%. So we have very less foothold in this aspect. So to stand like at par at the global standards, we can boost the private sector participation in our space economy as well, so that we can also reap benefits out of it. We can also commercialize this sector. We can also increase the employment in this particular sector so that our economic growth would be there. Economic development would be there. So this is the major introduction you can write in your answer. Let's moving on to the body part. So first we are telling that yes, private sector participation, the positives of the private sector participation we need to write down. But before than that, we can also write about the key provisions of Indian Space Policy 2023 so that it reflects that how government via its provisions in this particular policy is prompting for the private sector participation. So the key provisions, the very first provision is about it encourages the R&D to strengthen the space programs. The next provision is India and the government wants this space to be utilized for the public needs as well. Like till now, the space domain has a very limited reach, like limited to the defense sector, limited to the communication, like the launching of the satellites with respect to defense, launching vehicles are there with respect to the defense, and communication satellites are there, and some satellites are there for the remote sensing. So the reach is very limited with respect to the utilization of the space sector. So via this ISP, Indian Space Policy 2023, India is boosting or is wanting to increase, to expand the reach of the space sector for the public needs. Like we can also launch satellites, we can come up with a new technology that will benefit agriculture sector, healthcare sector, education sector, disaster management or the disaster relief, etc. So India is encouraging utilization of the space sector for the public needs. Next is about now private sector and the government sector both will work in this space domain. So to maintain the level field playing so that no one will take the maximum benefit via suppressing others, so as the accessibility and availability of resources, the space as a platform, no favoritism would be there. So this should encourage the level field playing so as to boost the private sector participation. So the government has come up with the new regulator in space that will take care of level field playing game in the space economy. Next is about it is nurturing innovation. Like how nurture innovation via this policy? As we are saying that we need to increase the private sector participation. And how this private sector participation will be increased as far as the government is concerned? Like government can promote R&D, government can give education with respect to the space research, new technologies to startups, to new entrepreneurs, etc. So they can increase the reach so that the private sector can easily take part in the space research or the space economy. Next is about if we want to increase the private sector participation, we need to make the ecosystem or we need to make the enabling environment so that the private sector participation will be increased. Next is about technology driver. Now, we can use the space as a platform to increase our investments like financial investment, human investment and the technological advancements for the other domains as well that are associated with the space technology. Like if we'll be investing more and more in the space, like we'll come up with the new advancements, new technological, new research, like new launch vehicle and whatever with respect to the space, and that is being used in the other aspects like communication would be there, in computing, in material sciences. So if we'll be investing in the space, it means they can also be more developed. So we are using space as a platform to develop the other sectors also. Next is about we need to make sure like end-to-end private participation would be there. So coming to the next part, that is the significance of the private sector participation in space economy. The very first thing that is associated with the private sector is its effectiveness or the optimal utilization of resources, its expertise, its specialization to handling the resources. And when all these things would be there, it would result into increased efficiency. And when efficiency is there, the cost would be reduced. First thing. And second thing, if more and more private partners would come in this space sector, the competition would increase. And when the competition is very strong, it leads to the new technological advancements, new ways to produce it on economy of scale so as to reduce the costs. Finally, whatever they will do, it will result into the cheaper costs of space, goods and services to the consumer. So the very first thing is the significance or the benefit of boosting the private sector participation is its cost effectiveness and efficiency in doing their work. Next is about global advantage. So if we exploit this sector to make it commercialized, if we are getting benefits out of it, if we are expanding its reach to the normal day-to-day life, like for the public needs, for the agriculture, for health, for education, for disaster management, etc., it means it will be more accessible to people, and with this cheap cost effectiveness, it will be more available to the people also, more accessible to the people also. It means this sector would increase, would expand, and when this will have the opportunities or the expansion facilities, the global private sector will also take part, means the global investment would come in India. And when the investment increases, it comes with the new technologies also, new employment opportunities also, and increased economic growth. And when all these things will happen, it means India can become a leader. Always, like already India has some positive aspect in the space economy. Like India launches the other country space programs also, so it initiates the programs of the other countries as well. So already we have some positives, leverage for that. We can boost and we can exploit, or we can use this sector to expand our reach in the global domain. So India can become a leader in the space domain, and India can boost its space tourism, space diplomacy also. So this is this. Next is about the diversification and the growth with respect to like multiple domains only, and democratized space access. Now the wider public or the wider stakeholder will be taking part in the space research, space programs, space domain. More and more scientific research, scientists will take part in the space economy. More and more private sector startups would be there, educational institutions can take part. So we can expand our knowledge or research for the more celestial bodies also. All these people or all these stakeholders can do some collaborations for some research, etc. And the data, the space data will be more accessible to the people, etc. So these are the significance of increased private sector participation. Next is about the sustainable future. As the more private sector participation would be there will have been new technologies, how to reduce the debris, space debris out of space. So again, we can also move with the sustainable space future also. So these are some positives with respect to the private sector participation in the space economy. Moving on to the conclusion, we can write some summary that we need to embrace the global trend, like as we have discussed that SpaceX is increasing its footprints or foothold in the space economy. So India should also do that, like India take the leverage or advantage of already being a successful player in this particular domain. So and it throws the economic opportunities in front of India, and we need to ensure that India's space leadership would be shown to the world as well. So this was the first question. Let's see the model answer. Starting with the Indian space policy, the some key provisions of the Indian space policy 2023, then significance, and finally the conclusion. Okay, moving on to the next question. Gig economy, which is a reality now, inherently suffers from the various conceptual flaws. We need to analyze this statement. So the question is saying that yes, gig economy is a reality. It means there are more people that are involved in the jobs in this gig economy. So this is a reality, but yes, this sector suffers, or this economy suffers from the conceptual flaws. We need to write those flaws as well. So what we'll do, we'll write some positives also, we'll write some negatives. But the major demand is that about the conceptual flaws, then we'll start with the negatives only. So in the introduction, you can write about the definition of gig economy, that it is a free market system. It is the labor market that has the characteristics of presence of short-term contractors or the freelancers as opposed to the permanent jobs. So like the people, they are involved in the short term contracts based on the jobs. They are independent contractors who create and who monetize their contents for the companies. Like take an example of the taxi drivers like Uber, Ola, like the food delivery partners with respect to Zomato, Swiggy. Consultants are there, YouTube influencers are there. So these are the parts of the platform or the gig economy. So this way you can start the introduction via giving some definition. Next is you can write about some data that India ranks among some top 10 countries that has shown the increasing freelancers rate. And you can also write the Niti Aayog finding that the gig workforce is expected to rise to 2.35 crore by 2030. So you can write this data as well. Moving on to the body part, we need to write down some conceptual flaws. Means you need to write down the criticism of gig economy. The very first thing with respect to the gig economy is that we have discussed that they are the contractual workers. Like there are some terms of services, terms and conditions of services, and they are also freelancers. So they are not the permanent employees of any of the company. So if any worker is not the permanent employee of the company, they cannot extend the services or the benefits that the company is providing. So this hinders. First thing is about their job security, because they do not have any job security. Why? Because they are working on the contractual basis, like for 1 month, 2 months, and with respect to the freelancers, whenever they feel to do work, they take the project on the project basis, and once they will be finished, they do not have anything in their hands. So they do not have the job security. So this is why there is a lack of stability, because they work on the per project basis, and they are also being paid as a piece rate, that is per task they are being paid. Next is about they have lacked the employment benefits. Why? The very first thing is, on these gig workers, labor regulations are not there, because they are not working in the organized sector also. They are not working in any of the organization properly as a permanent employee. So no labor regulations are imposed on that as well with respect to the wages, hours, working condition, and right to collective bargain. They doesn't apply on that. And the very prominent issue is that these workers are not even being classified as the employees. So if they are not even the employees, then there is no income security, there is no social protection with respect to these gig workers. You can also write about that there are absence of the health benefits, retirement plans, and paid leaves. And the next is about the occupational safety and the health risk, and also about the exploitative practices. Like take an example of women as an Uber driver. So this poses the risk of being a woman if she drives throughout the road in nights. So this poses some occupational risks, health risks, etc. There are the cases of assault, molestation, etc. And like some cases of that the delivery partner is being beaten by the public. So there are the issues with respect to the occupational risks and health risks are there. And exploitative practices being like they are not being given the wages as per as a wage code. There are the high commission rates and unfair terms and conditions of the services. Next is about there are the unequal access of the opportunities. Like how? And also you can also term it like as this way, you can put it as this way, like as you might have also come across that the delivery partner, sometimes he is a BTech person, sometimes he is enrolled in some diploma course. It means their skills are so high and still they are getting the minimum, not even the minimum daily wages. So there is the opportunity mismatch also. There are the skill mismatch in this particular sector. Next is about the limited career development, that they do not know, there are no growth perspective in this domain. Like if they are doing the delivery, what they can become, they do not have any sources of getting promoted of and getting the proper economic growth or the career growth in their lives. Next, yes, gig economy has some challenges, but still it has some benefits with respect to the companies who are hiring these gig workers and with respect to the gig workers themselves. Like what are the benefits with respect to the gig workers? They make profits. They do their regular job in a day and finally at nights or like as a part-time job they do also the freelancing works on the project basis, they earn more. So the first thing is that they want to make more profits, that is why they are being preferred by the gig workers as well. Next is about it promotes the women empowerment or the women employment. Sometimes women leave their jobs due to certain issues like getting married, childbirth, issues of the health, etc. So they can sit at home, they can do the freelancing work on the project basis, so that it gives the income to the women also. So the women is employed as well as the empowered women. Next is about the retired people. Retired people also can use their skills with respect to this gig economy. Next is about also it's about convenience. This millennials, they do not want to work for the full time, so they are preferring on the project basis jobs only. And with respect to the companies or the employers, what are the benefits? They feel that efficiency, productivity is higher with respect to these gig workers, because they know that their jobs will be lost if they will not work properly. So the productivity is higher of the workers. With respect to the economical sources, these employers save the resources, like they do not have any need to give the benefits to the gig workers. Office space is not there, they can work from home, they can do the work of the freelancing, and they do not have the 9 to 5 jobs. They employees do not have any need of the physical space to sit, so the company saves the resources over there. No need to give the trainings as well, no need to give the health benefit, post retirement benefits, employment benefits, etc. And also, this is a time of startups, new entrepreneurs are getting established. So these startups do not have much financial resources to pay full-time workers, so they also prefer the gig workers. So this way you can write and you can divide the benefits into the two parts, with respect to the employers, with respect to the employees, that are gig workers. Next is about the conclusion. In conclusion, what you can write? You can write how we need to address the concerns with related to gig workers, because they are providing more and more jobs. We cannot just shut them out. So we need to address the concern so that more security of jobs would be there. There are some codes, rules and regulations through which this gig economy can work. With this, we are increasing or boosting the safety and security of the workers as well, and also increasing the employment rate in this particular sector. So what we need to put our collaborative efforts, like you can put example like Uber has partnered with Ayushman Bharat for the healthcare services for the gig workers. Next is about we need to formulate the explicit rules so as to provide the social security for these gig workers with proper regulations. So this was the second question. Let's see the model answer. Starting with the basic definition of the gig economy, that the conceptual flaws in it, finally the benefits out of that what we need to do more in conclusion. Let's move on to the third question. While other countries are looking inward, a focused policy shift in integrating with major supply chain and increasing exports could be the key strategy for India to build its manufacturing capabilities? So now what this context is saying, that majorly all around the world, the countries, they are doing the inward looking. It means they are protecting their domestic industries and they are taking protectionist measures. So this is the time going on. The next thing, what this context is saying, that India, to use this time, we need to make a policy shift. We need to do some changes in our policy, in our foreign trade policy. What is that? We need to integrate ourselves with the global supply chain and increase the exports. So if we'll do that, it will be a key strategy for India to build its manufacturing capabilities. As we all know that we have just shifted from the agriculture to the services sector, we have missed this manufacturing sector. We have very less capabilities in this manufacturing sector. So what this question is saying, that this is the right time that India need to take a shift in the policy, how we can increase or boost our manufacturing sector via increasing the export. It means what India can go towards, India can go towards the export-led growth. Export-led growth with respect to manufacturing sector also. So this is the basic context given in the question. Now, the main question is, in light of this statement, we need to analyze the government's policy of export-led growth. So we need to write the positives of export-led growth, some challenges associated with that. And also we need to highlight the challenges. So this way, you need to first understand what the question is saying, and then you can start the introduction. You can start the introduction via giving that India has come up with the new foreign trade policy, new trade policy, and it is aiming to triple its export to $2 trillion by 2030. It means that India is expanding its export domain. Export-led growth would be there till 2030, it is aiming for. So you can write about India's foreign trade policy aspects, that India is aiming to triple its export to $2 trillion by 2030, and like till now India's export sector has a very less contribution to India's GDP. We need to increase that also. Like it's approximately, sometimes it's fickle around 15 to 22%. So we need to increase that as well. So what the question is putting the emphasis is on, it's putting the emphasis on the export-led development with respect to the India's development. India's economic growth would be there. So this way you can start the introduction. With respect to the context, you can also use this context that to boost the manufacturing capabilities in India, we need to integrate India as a country towards a global supply chain and towards to increasing the export. Like if we will integrate ourselves with the global supply chain, what it will do? We can exploit the technologies, new expansion technologies from this global supply chain. When the new technologies would be there, new financial resources would be there, then we need to, and also to participate in this global supply chain, we need to skill our workforce as well, so that they can withstand those facilities and the capabilities what the international domain is putting in front of us. So we need to give the skill development, human development, resources we need to put more and more. So this is how will return in increasing our manufacturing capabilities also. If there will be the good skilled labor is there, good financial resources are there, good human resources are there, new technologies we are using from there, it means we are using all those things in our manufacturing sector. So by default, if we'll do this, our manufacturing sector will take a boost. So this is the particular question. Now we need to focus more and more on export-led growth. Next, coming on to the body part, the benefits associated with the export-led growth. Now, when we'll increasing our exports, it will reduce the current account deficit, it will reduce the trade deficit, it will stabilize our balance of payment, and if our macroeconomic stability indicators are good, it means the foreign investors will have the confidence in our currency, in our economic stability, they will also put their investments in India. Our credit ratings would be increasing. So this would boost investor sentiments, and also when we will be increasing our exports, it means we are increasing our forex reserves as well. Next is about reducing trade deficits. It is the part of the current account deficit only. So it further decreases the trade deficit. Next is about it strengthens the self-reliant objective like Atmanirbhar Bharat, because we are making more and more products in India and finally exporting it to the other countries. So we are self-relying, not depending on the imports, but what we are doing, we are making it, producing it. We'll be boosting Make in India initiative. We are doing the self-reliant, we'll be fulfilling the self-reliant objective, Atmanirbhar Bharat. And also one positives is like we will be reducing, or we will be doing the import substitution. We will be producing in India itself, then finally exporting, because so as to reduce the cost of imports and finally exports. So what we'll do, we will reduce our imports, we will make in India only. So it will reduce the imports of the raw material, so it reduces the cost of the final product. So when we will export this reduced cost product in the market, it will be the a good competition for the market. We can withstand in the global competition when we have the cheap products. The demand would be more. So these are some positives or the benefits associated with the export-led growth. Now coming on to the next part, challenges associated with the export-led growth. So for India to be the leader at the global level for its export products, India needs to export more at the cost competitive prices. For that, there should be proper uniformity, and if not uniformity, there should be the level field playing for all the states as well, first thing, and also all the states should take part in the export-led development. The export-led development of India cannot only be dependent on Gujarat or Maharashtra, some developed states of India. So there are some challenges with respect to the export-led development. What are those challenges? Intra and the interstate regional disparities are there. So coastal states like Gujarat and Maharashtra, they lead in exports. Landlocked states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, they lag behind. Then next is about the poor R&D infrastructure is there. Poor quality or the substandard products are there. Like we have seen in the past also that with respect to the agricultural products, they do not withstand with the WTO standards. So they are being disregarded at the global arena. Next is about the environmental concerns. Now, more and more countries are taking imports which have the less carbon footprints or the greenhouse gases emissions. Like European Union has come up with the new initiative or the new policy known as CABM, Carbon Adjustment Border Mechanism, and they are banning the product from the countries which have the relaxed carbon norms or the carbon emission norms. So again, it poses some challenges with respect to the India's exports. Next is about the India's export would need to face huge competition by the other developing states also. Like you can quote about Bangladesh, Vietnam, etc. There they have the skilled labor also and the cheap labor also. They do not have like proper wages code, so their products which is finally coming into the market, they have at the very low cost. So we need to face some challenges with respect to that as well. Next is about, because we need to be a export led country, so for that our parity should be there in all the domains. Like service sector would be there, service exports can be there, manufacturing, agricultural exports, and within manufacturing also, like all the domains should have some approximately equal say also. But till now, what is the scenario? Service sector has the very high export rate, but not the manufacturing sector. And out of manufacturing also, like petroleum products are there, but not the metals or the other minerals are there. And some industrial exports are also not there. So there are some disparities within the different domains as well. Next is about the decline in the global demand. due to the global disruptions, global supply chain disruptions, wars, like as we have seen in the Russia-Ukraine war. So they hampers the geopolitical scenarios. So this can also puts a challenge on India with respect to their export development. Next is about the rise of protectionism. Like we have already seen that the protectionist policies, they are putting embargoes, quota-based tariffs, non-tariffs barrier on the imports. So again, this protectionist disruptions can pose a challenge with respect to the India's export also. Moving on to the next part, that okay, these are the scenarios, whatever the reality is, we have already seen. Now what the Indian government is doing to boost its economic growth with respect to the export. So how Indian government is boosting its exports? So there are some schemes like PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme. So they are giving approximately 4 to 6% subsidy, or the subsidies for that. Then coming on to the digital economy, India is putting its focus to expand its digital domain, digital footprint, so that more data analytics, more data collection, more data development would be there, so as to put advancement in the quantum computing, etc., for the cost reduction in the various other domains. Next is about India is also prompting export manufacturing hubs in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Town, like you can give example of town of export excellence. Next is about increased export competitiveness. You can give example of EPCG scheme, export promotion capital goods. So this scheme is like, take an example, if we want to export one product, and for that product to be exported we need some raw material, and that raw material we are importing. So what India has done, it has come up with this scheme, and what this scheme does is, the raw material that is being imported, for finally to export the final product, we are not putting any duty on this imported raw material, so as to make it cheap, so as to boost the exports. Next is about utilizing FTAs, free trade agreements, like CEPA with UAE, so that any protectionist policies like any embargoes, any tariffs, this will not hamper our export-led development. Next is about encouraging the household investments, so that people from the household, they will invest more and more into the economy, so that investments would be there, so that new developments, new production would be there, so as to increase the export rate. Next is about promoting manufacturing-led growth. Again, we have already discussed it. Then climate-oriented growth. Now, the climate change is again a reality. What we can do? We can make the new products, new technologies, or new goods, or the new products with respect to the climate resilient infrastructure, with respect to the climate oriented growth. Like we can take advantage of PM Kusum, we can use one sun, one world, one grid for the clean energy. Finally, conclusion, what we can do, we can write like a summary only, that we need to put a focus on domestic manufacturing for export led growth, what the question was saying earlier. And for that, we need to create a vibrant platform for the exporters to showcase their skills, to showcase their products, so that we can integrate them with the global supply chain. So this way you can write the conclusion. Moving on to the model answer, starting with the new foreign trade policy. Next, opportunities, some challenges, and effective steps to boost our exports. Finally, coming with the conclusion. So this was it from my side for today. Thank you and have a nice day, and keep writing.